You don't sit around and wait for policymakers to change stuff. You get in there and you get it done, and do the work that's not being done. If people are living on the margins, they're not being fed, they don't have adequate housing or schooling, get in there and make some of that stuff happen on your own, as you wait for policies and prayers to be answered.
Welcome to Mentoring Kings. Where do we go from here? A look at social justice in America.
I would like to be a catalyst for restorative change in the world, using my time, my talents, my treasure to see broken things made new in the world we live in. Racism is an uncomfortable subject for white people in America. It instantly makes them feel indicted and accosted, and there's a defense mechanism, because what racism does, or the talk about racism, is it challenges the worldview of many white people. And so when their worldview is challenged, no one likes their worldview challenged. First of all, we don't like to have to start over. A fish doesn't know it's wet. And if you introduce a fish to the concept of water, it's like, wait, what? This is just too complex. I'm in water, there's land, help, my brain can't. And so when you start unpacking, how racism has been foundationally baked into our culture, it makes a lot of white people unnerved, because they've got to now process, wait, am I KKK? I'm not evil. So wait, what does this mean? And have I missed opportunities? And there's just so much work that has to be done. And so when you start talking about that uncomfortability rises to the surface, and it's easier to find ways to say you're wrong about your talk on racism, and you're shaking stuff up, and we don't like that, than it is to say, wait, if you're right, then what can I do to process this? For me, shaking the institution of Christianity, shaking the institution of America by saying, hey, racism is still here. They want you to go away. They want you to stop talking about that. And so either A, they won't support you because they don't want to hear this. It's like, this is too much for me to deal with. Or B, they'll make it a point to say, you are controversial and I'd rather not, book you. I'd rather not bring you to this particular event because we don't want to deal with controversial issues, even though there's supposed to be healing and restorative issues. So that happened to me. I had shows that would previously have 3,000 people that dwindled down to 300 at one point in time in my career. And so, you just have to have a good backup plan, and be concerned being on the right side of history. When it comes to anything else, we do the work. When I talk to some of my white missionary friends who are like, I want to go to China to be a missionary and do the Lord's work, they do the research. They understand the language. They understand the culture. They want to not be offensive. They do all of those particular things before they land that plane and go do the work. You can do that same kind of work here in America. So it's not our job. It's not our job to tear down, to address racism. If I'm being honest, it's not. White supremacy is not something that Black people built. Something that white people built, and white people have the power to tear it down. My personal fear as a Black man in America is being able to create a healthy and safe legacy for the future generations. There's so many things that stand in my way of being able to create an opportunity. When you look at companies like a Burberry, they have 100-year plan on how they're going to implement things. And unfortunately for us, we are, this is many of us is first generation opportunity, first generation college, first generation, so many different things. And my fear is that we won't get the opportunity to create legacy. I mean, Dr. Martin Luther King was marching to create legacy, and he was killed. there's a fear of death, of being killed. There's a fear of being blackballed. There's a fear of being becoming a slave by being put in the prison industrial complex. There's a fear of an invisible ceiling that won't allow me access. The first time an officer pulled a gun on me, I was 13 years old. I was thrown to the ground, a knee placed on my neck, and they were looking for weapons, which none of us had any. And that was my first incident. I've been picked up by the police, for playing in a manhole. And when I was brought to the office, I saw so many of my friends on the wall, and they had like compiled these gang lists, and there were friends of mine that I knew weren't in gangs. All that to say that it started to make me feel as if, well, maybe this is who I am, since this is who you say that I am. In a weird way, it begins to shape your identity. A person's perception of you can oftentimes become how you perceive yourself. And so, around that same time, 13, 12 years old, at different points in time, police officers would stop us, a group of black boys on the street, and ask us our names. And, they began to compile gang lists, and they would start taking our names because they just assumed that we were going to be matriculating and assimilating into the gang culture. And they wanted to keep tabs on us as time moved forward. When you're talking about trauma, there's so many different types of traumas that people can experience. I've experienced at least 5 major traumas, different types of abuses, sexual abuse, physical abuse. A car wreck is a major trauma. Oftentimes these major traumas are the result of racial inequalities and circumstances that people are placed in. A lot of that PTSD is genetically transferable. And then there are some traditions that we pass down that we don't realize are traumatic. We think that they're just cultural practices. And so, the way we, experience verbal abuse, some people will call it post-traumatic slave syndrome, or, the way we are, men were taught to be studs and just sleep with women in order to produce more slaves and move on. Well, that continues to carry on. That mentality carries on. And so fathers, find themselves caught in a deadly cycle, which we're breaking. And so part of it is breaking that cycle. Centering yourself is first a realization that you have some historical trauma, that you have some things. And a lot of times, some of the stuff we've experienced, like myself, the whoopings that I got, and we're not talking about a spanking. We're talking about you running around the house getting beat with whatever's available. The verbal, abuse and all those particular things will make you like a wet paper towel. And so, you may think, oh, I'm fine. But then something small lands on that wet paper towel, and of course it breaks. So all the years of trauma that you experience have made you like a wet paper towel, and it takes one little thing. And so the centeredness is you taking the time to let that stress in your life, that paper towel, dry, and allowing it to not be stretched even further. So some of that is just taking time off. We'll say, oh, well, Jesus help me. It's kind of that old adage of like, God, I'm, drowning in the water, and, I'm praying that God will save me. A helicopter flies by. You say, no, I'm waiting for God to save me. A boat comes by, and this person says, I'm praying for God to save me, and then, the man drowns and dies. And he says, God, why didn't you save me? And God's like, I sent you a helicopter. I sent you a boat. You didn't take any of them. And in the same way, we're saying, no, God will heal me. And God's like, I sent you medical professionals, medicine, meditation, and mindfulness. I sent you all those tools. You didn't use them. You were waiting on this arbitrary thing to happen. And so we just got to remember that God has given us those tools There's nothing shameful about medicine. There's nothing shameful about seeing somebody and telling them what's going on in your life, in your world. Those are things that God does. If you were having heart conditions or, blood pressure, you're not going to be ashamed to take medicine, and you're not going to say, oh, I don't want to see anybody about that. If you're on a diet or you want to lose weight, you're not going to say, I'm just going to pray the weight away, God. You got to go work out. And in the same way, we've got to go take the steps to get mentally healthy. Also, one day a week is just making sure that I get some time to do what I need to do to get away, to not have to think about anything, to not have to worry about anything. Sometimes, most days, I'll wake up early enough and do mindfulness prayer and meditation. God tells us to meditate on his word. And so I may just meditate on a particular part of truth over and over again for a little while. Exercise, your body needs to release certain endorphins for your brain and dopamine for your brain to heal properly. And then sleep. You've got to get good sleep. Your brain reprocesses and heals itself through REM. When your eyes are moving backwards and forwards, side to side, that's your mind kind of understanding what has happened and calibrating itself. Restoration is, in a lot of ways, it's my life's work. A lot of ways it is me saying that you have to admit that you're broken if you want to heal. It's me saying that I don't care how bad your life is or what you experience, that God is consistent with his word and he brings restoration to everyone. And then it's also a call for restorative justice, to see people and societies get the restoration that they should get. So the music is just me in my element, enjoying myself, having a good time, but at the same time creating and crafting music with John Legend, BJ the Chicago Kid, Kirk Franklin, Danny Lay. It is a world that people have to enter in. And I think it's kind of like a hospital. I feel like, I want people to walk into this, and if they're hurting, they're going to come out healed. If they're already good, they're going to come out feeling more confident, because they're like, oh man, that was great. I had a good, checkup today, but I just want people to walk in and say, man, can I just be honest and be myself here? A great therapy session. Maybe you need to cry and you feel better afterward, or maybe you just needed that encouragement. You needed somebody to tell you you matter, you're somebody, you're doing right, you're on the right track, and that keeps you feeling restored and keeps you going. I always want to use my platform to speak for those who don't have voices, so the disenfranchised, the systemically oppressed voices in society, people on the margins. And so that's expressed itself in the prison system, working with Prison Fellowship, also, working with Masks for the People, making sure that inmates have masks, and they have, PPE, so they can stay healthy and stay sanitized in this pandemic, and also working to make sure that people who are experiencing homelessness are cared for. I'm taking my kids later today to go serve with Love Beyond Walls, which is an organization in Atlanta that serves those who are on the margins and who are homeless, and just making sure that their needs are met, and we can just hear their voices and hear what's not happening, so we can take those legitimate concerns to the policymakers and see if some change can happen. Prayer, policy, publicity, and programs. Obviously prayer, because our faith is going to be crucial, believing that there is a higher power that has a moral and ethical standard for us as a people and who wants to see that fleshed out in society. Policy, there are policies that can be changed if you're involved in making sure that you vote, making sure that you sign the petitions, making sure that you are involved in order to see policy changes for your society. Publicity, using your voice, whether that's social media, whether that is, protests, whatever it is that creates noise for some of the issues that are going on in our society to be heard. And lastly, programs, getting involved in programs that actually do the work until someone sees it You don't sit around and wait for policymakers to change stuff. You get in there and you get it done, and do the work that's not being done. If people are living on the margins, they're not being fed, they don't have adequate housing or schooling, get in there and make some of that stuff happen on your own, as you wait for policies and prayers to be answered.
Thank you for tuning in to Mentoring Kings. Where do we go from here? To learn more about future episodes, visit www.mentoringking.com and join the conversation on social media by following and liking @Mentoring King on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.